Hi, Bianca.
Hello. Hello, fellow stream friends.
Hello. We
On
got some
this
stream friends in here already. The Twilio bot dropping sass right out the gate. Wow.
this is important. I mean, we did talk about the bots taking over. So,
Yeah.
this is how it starts. Also, I
Yeah.
just realized I put my sweatshirt backwards. It's not a I was
You
like,
got the tag coming out the front?
no, you know how I realized? I realized when I tried to put my hands in my pockets and I was like,
Oh, and you're like, oh, they're behind my back.
yeah, wow. Well, happy Tuesday.
Happy
Um,
Tuesday.
like, wow, what a start. What a start.
You got any
Uh,
caffeine with you? You got any fun beverages? I don't know.
my not sponsored, my not sponsored water.
There you go.
You
I got
know,
my sponsored water.
you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sponsored by Twilio.
Yeah.
Well, wait, see, this is where I get a little jelly because I'm like, it's like, where did you get that cool mug? What, like,
Signal last year.
okay, but then I'm like, I don't need any more mugs. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
our,
I totes and water bottles are the things that like if I bring too many more home, I'm gonna get in trouble. Like,
that's real. That's real. It's
yeah.
like at some point, it's like how many Stanleys, Yetis, off-brand Twilios, like how many of these do I really need?
We for my wedding, I can almost maybe I'll go find one if I have one back in my closet. We did water bottles, and at first I was like, I want like a nice one, like a corksicle or something. And they're $40 each. And I was like, off-brand. And we got these kind of funky shaped ones with a cool little line pattern that we got lucky to find, and like they were so cheap, and being an interesting shape, people love them. It was like everyone was like, it's such a cool water bottle. And it was like, instead of $40, it was like 12. And I was like, that's great.
You had merch. You had wedding merch.
We had wedding merch. Yeah. We also had totes. So I
Oh,
had all the things I
okay.
can't bring any more of. Part of the reason is because of like, you know, that.
Oh
Yeah.
my
I'm
gosh.
looking behind because I'm like tempted to go like off screen and grab one, but I think that's okay. We'll do it. I'll do it another
No,
time.
we'll do our show and tell one of
Yeah.
these days.
Okay.
Stream friends, how are y'all doing? Definitely let us know how your day is going. We are
Yeah.
happy to see y'all per usual. But yeah, have my off-brand water.
Great.
What's
I
going
love
on?
it.
It's like there's just so much activity.
I
So
have
it's
so many
like,
events. I'm going to throw about some stuff in chat. I've got, if anyone wants to come join, I'm going to be talking with Kelly, who's one of our amazing developer evangelists. I'm going to be talking to her tomorrow about, I think that's the right, yeah, that'll work. You can get,
hopefully.
oh, no, I don't think I dropped the right link, but you know what? It's good enough. Here's the right link for that. That
Well,
was all of our webinars, but the webinar tomorrow is on the lookup API, which is a super great API that if you're
mhm,
doing anything with phone numbers, honestly, this should be a layer in your stack. It's basically like how you learn about what kind of a number you're calling, right? You don't want to text
mhm.
you don't want to text a number that can't get it. You want to make sure that, if I'm sending Bianca a text, I want to make sure it's Bianca and not, somebody else. And then also next week, we've got the quarterly launches or quarterly releases webinar where I'm going to be on with Steph, who's one of our product marketing managers, or I think that's her role. Yeah, sure. She does like competitive product marketing stuff. And we're just going to be talking about all the awesome stuff that Twilio launched in the last quarter. So if you want to see more of me, I know I'm sick of me too. This is how you do it. So yeah, these are a couple webinars that we're running tomorrow and the week after. So, but yeah, as you said, lots happening.
It is. Yeah, it's like we have that, and then we even I was like, if you want to follow Alex on his tour dates, they're
I
all
know.
virtual,
Yeah, my
but
tour. I'm on tour right now.
the tour.
Virtual. No, they're not all virtual, Bianca.
Yes, I just remembered. We're gonna be in New York in a few weeks. So
Yeah,
if
we're taking
you
basically A/B testing on tour.
basically,
Yeah,
with one stop, one
one
in
stop.
person, one in
Yeah,
person stop. But if you or anyone you know is in New York, definitely we'll share that link too. We'll be doing like a live, not maybe like a live taping. No, we'll have our friends from ETI. We'll have It'll be really good. It'll be really good. It's around transform. We'll be talking about like AI personalization. So all good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, with so much stuff happening, it's like making me even think about, like, we've been talking about like experimentation a lot recently, which is like finding that balance between like, like, doing day-to-day stuff, but also like, how do you create room for creativity? But like, how have you been thinking about that, especially with like, we're in that hustle and bustle space sometimes?
I think that you can find creativity in the small things. I've actually, I just started improv again. I just started my level 3 class. It's very exciting. So that's Monday night. So I'm coming fresh off of improv, and it's so much of it is just like finding the little comedy and like small little things that happen and like just pulling that out. So that's for the comedy. And I think creativity as well. Like I, earlier today finished my presentation that I'm giving tomorrow, and figuring out how to tell a story about something, how to talk about these technical concepts and like make them interesting and exciting, and also visually appealing in the slides is I enjoy that side of creativity. I think that's one of my creative outlets. That and cooking. I like to cook a lot. So but yeah, I think it's, you gotta, in my mind, I don't know, I think there's like, the artist way, where you can like set aside time for like creativity dates, or you can also just find ways to be creative in like your everyday stuff. So
I actually like that. And I think it's also realistic, because I think in so many of our minds, it's like creativity needs to be this dedicated space versus, like you said, how can I infuse creativity? How can I infuse experimentation? And like, yeah, I definitely feel for, CEOs and executives, because it's like, you go from this like day to day doing stuff day to day, and it's like, you don't feel like as much that you're able to be like creative, and you don't have the dedicated time. So it's like, I love that aspect of just like, how do you infuse it, right? And excitement is a way of just like infusing creativity. I also do think even that aspect too of just like keeping it silly sometimes, right? Like how do you bring personality, authenticity too?
Yeah. Speaking of creativity though, shout out to our very own Chef Brent, who's been making some super fun reels. The last two that Brent put out, we talked about the one last week, and then this is the one that he put out as well. Made me so happy. Like so it's so fun. There's dancing and singing on both of them. It's just it's so good. And Brent, thank you for bringing the creativity and making this more fun for all of us. This was I was just like so thrilled by these last two reels, and I'm just like so happy to be a part of that.
I think the random dance break that we had, I was like, I loved it. It's like, we're not singing, but yeah, I think Brent is a good example in that, like, it's two things that come up even with the Brent stuff, which is like, I promise Brent did not pay us to mention his name on every stream, but I think what comes to mind is really this aspect of like, there's the thing that you need to do, but then it's also like, what can you try? What can you kind of, and then also on the spots that you're unable to do it yourself, like what tools can you use to kind of like convey and communicate? So I do think being able to like small chunks, small projects, it doesn't have to be a huge moment.
For sure. And I actually think that's a little bit of an interesting segue to our guest. So we're in a few moments, we'll be bringing out Elmer Thomas. Elmer joined SendGrid. He's like one of the first employees at SendGrid, got purchased, but that means he's been like with Twilio in some form, like employed by the same people forever. And the thing that forever, it feels like forever to me. It's been, I will ask him exactly how long, but I think it's been 10 plus years. But the thing that is, first of all, Elmer's like one of the nicest people, period. Super great guy, and always there to like help and chat and talk. Even like as we were getting started before this, he's like, I'm so happy to be here. Also, I wish we didn't have to, like, we could catch up more. Like, I just miss you guys. He's just such a sweet guy. And one thing that impresses me with Elmer, and I saw it most specifically with the kind of like AI stuff that's happening now. He dove in head first and he's been experimenting. And so like we're talking about like experimenting and being creative. Elmer's just a great example of somebody who's been in a role here, you know, at Twilio, and his role's shifted, and we're going to learn more about that. But like, he's never stopped exploring and experimenting, and it's super inspirational.
No, I love that. It does speak volumes, because like you said, when we were doing a lot of even our own internal tinkering, right, with AI, like Elmer's like, okay, well, what can I build with this? And I do think really having that space. So we definitely probably have lots of questions, you know, to ask. So I'm wondering, I think it might be a good time to introduce our good friend.
Yeah, so
Elmer
let's bring Elmer on. Hi, Elmer.
Hello.
And
thank you for having me.
Of course, you're calling in from California, right?
Yes, Southern California. Just survived a few fires.
Oof. That's
feeling
we like
very lucky today.
Yeah, we kind of have to deal with that a little bit in not in Denver, but like in the mountains near Denver. So I feel you. It's stressful. It's a little bit stressful, but I'm glad you guys are all good.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've got 3 different time zones represented here. You know, diversifying a little bit.
I was like a little diversity, you know, diversity across time zones. We have all the folks.
Yeah.
Right. So Elmer, first and foremost, welcome. We are so excited and grateful to have you. I think if you were to kind of, how would you typically introduce yourself? If someone's like, "Hi, Elmer, we just met," well, they wouldn't ask you like that. But you know, like, how would you introduce yourself, you know, to folks?
You know, I'm going to steal a little bit here from Ricky Robinette. I like to just ask how it could be helpful, and then kind of play off how they respond and what they're into to help determine what that actually looks like. I think maybe I learned that from being in sales, kind of trying to understand what a person may need. And sometimes it's just an ear, just to kind of rubber duck against. Sometimes it's actual practical advice or connecting someone with someone else. But I would say, you know, generally I view myself as someone who was lucky enough to learn how to do software development and also inspire others to learn. I'm a big fan of teaching other folks on how to empower and enable themselves. You know, a lot of times it's easy just to go ahead and do the thing for someone. And of course, I'm no stranger to doing that, but I really prefer to take a step back and say, look, I want to show you how you can empower yourself. And then in turn, please do the same for others.
No, I love that.
That makes, and it makes a lot of sense why you do what you do, because you're on the docs team, right, Elmer? So,
yes.
Yeah. So Elmer, if you've ever used our docs, Elmer is one of the people to thank there for keeping those up to date. I know it's a sometimes thankless job, but we appreciate it. I know, like, the first thing I saw about Twilio was how awesome their docs were, and was just like, I'm in. This is perfect. And SendGrid has great docs too. And but like, how did you get here? Like, how did you? Because you were like OG. You were OG SendGrid. Like, I don't think you ever moved to Boulder, but you were hanging out in Boulder sometimes. So in my kind of like, you know, backyard here in Colorado, when they were in Techstars. So like, what was where did you start? How did your journey? And then how did like you get from there to where you are now?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question that requires a little bit of time.
We've got time. We're here to chat.
Thank you so much. Well, hopefully my story is helpful to folks. I started off at the university in at Riverside, transferring out of LA Valley College is where I really started to play around with computers. I had a mentor there who actually gifted me a computer, and I got this book called DOS for Dummies. And and I just thought it was so fascinating that I could actually just type some commands in and the computer will do stuff.
Yeah,
I just thought that was fascinating. I felt like it was a little bit a lot to put so many floppy disks in just to install one program, but whatever.
I do remember those days. Yeah.
Yes. And then so I transferred over to UC Riverside, and it was there that I started to actually get the bug of software development. It felt like those first 2 years where it was mostly just math and physics. I was like, I was bamboozled. This has nothing to do with what I thought software was going to be. I thought I was going to be making games and all this stuff. And then next thing you know, I was, I think it was an operating systems course where it finally hit me. I had a really good teacher who had worked in industry first. And I think he came from IBM, and he talked about this concept of developing interfaces first. And really kind of this idea of what we now say wearing the customer's shoes, like seeing how the customer interacts with the thing and then build in the functionality. And so it was around that time I started to feel like I can actually do stuff. And so we started dabbling with some entrepreneurship. I was working in a research lab there, and I was fortunate enough to meet one of the founders of SendGrid, Isaac Saldana. He was the sysadmin, and I was always very impressed and amazed with what sysadmins did. It just seemed like this dark arts magic to me, but the scope of what they were responsible for was always interesting. And so we started playing around with doing websites. We were heavy into open source community back then, doing a lot of open source development, creating apps from scratch using PHP, things like that. And I think at some point as undergraduates, we had a little bit over 200 customers. And I think at that time it was
that's a lot for like, yeah,
it's very stressful because these were mostly small businesses.
Yeah.
And so if something went wrong, like if their internet went out, it was typically our fault. So it was anything to do with the internet. Even though we were just doing the website, it would fall on our shoulders. So we learned a lot during that time.
Yeah.
A lot about everything. You know, when you're in a startup, you wear so many hats. And it was through that experience how SendGrid was born. One of the clients that Isaac was working for was having trouble getting emails delivered. And he figured out a way. He looked at the market first and saw that there was no one actually doing that. And so he did the brilliant thing of starting to ask people, hey, if this service existed, would you want this service? Would you pay for it? How much would you pay for it? And there was enough people that said, yeah, we absolutely would want that service, that he ended up building it out, ended up getting infamously rejected from Y Combinator, but famously accepted to Boulder Techstars.
I know.
Which I am super grateful for, because Boulder is a wonderful place and I miss it a lot.
Come visit.
It's just
yes, down the road.
Definitely. Yes, it's not too far. But and so they, at that time when they left to go to Techstars, that fateful day, I remember I had to tap out. At that time, I was barely surviving. We had our first child, and I was doing a lot of consulting just to survive. And I wasn't brave enough to drop everything and go to Boulder, but they did, thankfully. And I think it was about maybe 6 months later, they got their first tranche of funding and were able to bring me back into the fold. I think I was probably employee number 5 or something like that. And I came in as a web manager at that time. And if you go to the Wayback Machine, you can kind of see some of the early days of SendGrid. We had a big giant counter that showed how many emails were being sent every day, which now seems so tiny compared to now. But we were able to get SendGrid started here in Riverside, and then we moved over to Orange County, first to the city of Orange, and then Anaheim Hills, and then finally to Irvine, where in Irvine is where we were acquired by Twilio.
Right. And
during that time,
well, you guys you were always based in Denver, though, like the chunk of the company, right?
Yes, the Denver was pretty much the headquarters.
Yeah.
Actually Boulder, and eventually to Denver. Similar thing happened here because Riverside was kind of where all of the founders were, but at some point it was a talent issue. Like, how many people can we get to come work all the way in Riverside from Orange County? At some point, the balance was such that we had to do what was best for the company and say, okay, we're going to move where the talent is and not force them to have to do those horrible commutes. And so that's what we did. I think a similar thing happened in Boulder and Denver. It was a place where there was a more epicenter of talent that was able to be acquired by SendGrid at that time. And it was such a beautiful office there too in Denver. We had a couple offices there. Oh yes. I missed the Irvine one too. I think that's probably the closest match to that office was the one in Irvine.
Yeah. It's I had been tracking SendGrid because one of my friends, who's like a college friend, who actually ended up being my first roommate when I moved to Denver, he was like, yeah, not as early as you, but he like joined SendGrid right as they moved from Boulder to Denver. So I've been seeing the whole story, but it's so cool to see it from perspective, even like before that, like before they joined Techstars Boulder. And I know it's such a big part of the Techstars community because it was such a big success going public and all that. But yeah, that's super cool. And then
I do have a question. Yeah. Okay, before we get into one thing that sticks out, which is like even the rapport you had with the founder. Just kind of curious, what about the founder at the time, right? Especially early days when folks are figuring out like, wow, do I want to risk my my life or career trajectory? Like, what for you stood out about his leadership, or what would you say like helped you be like, all right, I'm going along this journey with you?
I would say it was the same thing with all of the founders, is this incredible passion, like almost like a real intense crafts person. Like maybe if you think of like a woodsmith caring about all of the details, not just for the sake of it, but for the sake of the passion of it, like just the creation of it, just the pure, I love what I'm doing. This is what I love to do kind of thing. And then combine that with a tremendous work ethic. I mean, at the time, Isaac had children and double major and sysadmin for the College of Engineering. To me, I question whether or not he was some robot that was sent to us to help us figure out what to do next. But he just was so inspiring. You couldn't help but spend time with him, and an hour goes by and you want to create something new. It's kind of like that experience when you go to a really cool hackathon. Same thing with Jose Lopez, one of the founders who's still with us here at Twilio. His passion, I remember when I first met him and he started talking about some of the apps that he developed. I mean, you could just feel the energy, just like, wow, this person actually cares about their craft and they're going to build some amazing things. And I just wanted to be a part of that energy. It was just so infectious.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Those are great. It just resonates. Like when I do think about like a leader's ability to inspire, because it's so shaky early days of any company. So I do feel like they always say like the person has to be bored, like just, you're like, I don't know about this. Just a little borderline, like, wow, this person, it's a little too far. Your passion is on another level, but I do think it's helpful when you're building cool things. Also, I know I'm asking you more stuff about startup stuff, but like even this other aspect of like, there are a lot of people that have never been through an acquisition. So like, I'm also curious about like, did the Twilio people want to fight you when you joined? JK. But like, what was that like? Did you know the SendGrid people? Y'all just stood there and you're like, well, I guess we're friends now. But what was that acquisition like in terms of just like being in a different work culture, kind of creating new normals? Just kind of curious about your journey running through an acquisition experience.
Yes. It definitely caught us, at least for me, it caught me by surprise, and kind of looking around at my peers, it was just kind of like, wow, we didn't see that coming, especially from what we considered a peer. We didn't feel like a peer would acquire us. We thought maybe it would be something like Google or Amazon or one of the other Microsoft that had been courting us. But then to get Twilio to come in, to me, it was a great relief, because I had been working with Twilions for so long and had such an admiration and respect. I mean, you were talking about the documentation. That was one of the things that we would be jealous about. We'd go to events and unsolicited people would always list Twilio, Stripe, and then sometimes SendGrid in the list of the best documentation in the world. And we were always mesmerized by finding Twilions out in the wild, so to speak, and their demos, how they would capture and captivate the audiences, get everybody to whip out their phones and text something, and then the energy and of the audience. I think Rob Spector was the first one that I saw do a live demo at the very first Signal. I think it was just called Twilio Conference at that time. But his demo is he had us all text in the name of our favorite movie, and then they just started torrenting. But of course, before they can actually download, he shut the laptop down. But it just gave like this incredible feeling of I can interact with you in real time programmatically, and it just made so many like light bulbs go off, because one of those early startups that we had to try to implement an asterisk server for telephony, and it was so horrible, and it was just very difficult. And then you find that you could just do this with an API call. It's incredible. It still blows my mind, the stuff that we could do now with our tools.
It's so cool to hear this from your aspect too, especially because last week we had Sam on, who got inspired because of Twilio and SendGrid showing up at hackathons and having these awesome demos. So it's so much fun. I'm just so proud to be like, I don't want to say like the inheritor of the culture that like has done all this. I feel like this developer relations is just we've done so much cool stuff, and like Twilio and Twilio and SendGrid, Segment to an extent too, but Twilio and SendGrid have kind of been at the center of that for a long time. How did you wait? I want to do one thing before I ask this next question, which is we weren't planning on doing this, but like I'm gonna share my screen really quick. Sorry, Brent, because you mentioned it, and here's that old here's the Wayback Machine of that old. I'm gonna bring you back to that old UI that you made here, counting out the 18 billion emails delivered by SendGrid in September of 2011. So 13 years ago. This is so good for the Wayback Machine. This is still here, but yeah, this is counter. I think we like probably I don't know what our volume is now, but like we probably do that in like a day or two here now.
Yeah.
But how does it feel? How does it feel even looking at, you know what I mean? Like looking at that, because in the moment you're probably like, yeah, I'm just like, how does it feel?
Yeah, this looks like some Web 2.0. Let's go. We've got the buttons with the shadows.
Yeah,
that's great. This actually was the upgrade from the site that I had in my mind, which was smtpapi.com. That's a mouthful, but that was the name of SendGrid at Techstars before they said, you know what, we need a name that people could pronounce.
Yeah, that's so funny. But yeah, sorry. You mentioned it. You mentioned way back. Found it. Wanted to bring it up. We're good.
Thank you. That's
cool.
It.
Yeah.
Love it.
So, so like you started kind of building websites and stuff. When did you get into DevRel, or like you like how did you turn into the DevRel role that you have now? Like how did that come about?
First, to back up a little bit, I love to learn, and I love to help other people experience the joy of learning. And so one day, Tim Falls makes this presentation at one of our, I think it was at an all hands meeting, that basically described a DevRel program that he wanted to start at SendGrid, where the first evangelist would be Brandon West. And one of his mentors was Josh Sheehan and from Twilio, and they basically wanted to bring that kind of developer relations to SendGrid. And the way he described it, I was like, yes, sign me up right now. How can I be a part of that? And so I did. I jumped in head first, and it was very intense. This was a period of my life where maybe for a couple years, there would be times I'd only be home for less than a week. We were traveling everywhere, because literally our slogan was SendGrid everywhere. We were trying to be everywhere, but there was a small team. Yeah. And so we had a lot to cover with not very much of us. And so since I'm here in the Inland Empire in Southern California, in between San Diego, LA, and Orange County, I had a relatively easy commute for stuff on the West Coast.
Yeah.
But occasionally, they'd scoot us all around. And Wow, the electricity when you go to a hackathon or any kind of event like a startup weekend. There was one year where we had a whole sponsorship from Startup Weekend for a year, and we went to so many of those, and just the passion of folks creating stuff. You know, when you're talking about creativity earlier, just being in a space where folks are getting together and creating. And then when you would see those demos and the Twilio demos in particular, because those would always be live coding. And so there was always this like edge, like, is it going to work? You know, and I remember my very first demo, I think it was in DC. And I was trying to, I went through this whole spiel about how we stop people from going into the spam folder. And in my demo, it went right to the spam folder. But there's where I learned quickly how to pivot.
Look, my very first demo was like, text is so great. It's a notification that you always receive, and like 90% of people open it. And then my phone was on Do Not Disturb, so I never got the text message. It's like, wait, it's like any minute now, it's gonna be a text. Sometimes takes a second. No, Do Not Disturb. So I feel you. That's so. It's like, but there's something about when a demo doesn't go right. It's just more relatable. Because look, right. When's the last time you wrote code and it worked on the first try? Like, it just doesn't happen.
You gotta make sure you prove to people you're not a bot. So it's very, just all the vibes. I will say, Alex said you've been here forever. Forever is not a date, but how long? How many years have you been at Twilio? Well, yeah,
SendGrid Twilio.
SendGrid Twilio.
It was April of 2019, so that is 14 years, something like that.
No, 15.
15 years. I don't know. I'm gonna have to ask ChatGPT.
Got it. You have to ask ChatGPT. Okay. And you said your daughter was or your first child is a daughter, I think, right? Was born right when that happened. So that's kind of like an interesting track. I'm actually in a similar thing because the same, basically within a month of finding out we were gonna have a baby, I got hired by Twilio. So like it's the same thing where it's like, I've been here about as long as I've had a child. So
it all works. I will say within 15 years, like so much has changed, so much has evolved. I guess I'm kind of curious, like, how have you seen, early days, DevRel, you're traveling a lot. How have the needs of the community evolved? Like, I'm just kind of curious, like what you've seen, how you feel like your DevRel journey has even evolved.
One of the things that was interesting in those early years of DevRel was this concept of hugs over clicks. We were trying to actually make real relationships with folks. And that was beyond just use the SendGrid API. It was about how can we be helpful? And I think that's one of the things why I also volunteer for the Twilio super classes whenever I can, because of exactly what you're saying, to try and understand what a developer needs in that moment, because it changes so fast. Especially now, I'm having a lot of trouble trying to keep up with all of the changes that we're all experiencing now. And I think one of the ways that we do that is by sitting next to the developers and figuring out what are they trying to build, and how can we get out of their way? How can we empower them to do the thing that they're trying to do? Because usually it's not trying to learn our API or figure out how to deal with spam. They want to do some kind of cool thing that they're doing. And so that's what I'm trying to help them do in any way that I can. Just kind of get out of the way in a sense, but get in a way just enough to help push them forward. Mm-hmm. And, these days I don't do as many hackathons as I did back then. So I don't quite have my pulse on the developer community as I did back then. But I would say that every time I dip my toe in, I would say the excitement and passion still feels there. It feels like there's still a lot of people that are excited to build, new people that never thought they'd be able to build in the first place, because these tools are opening up all sorts of opportunities for folks who maybe don't have a boot camp certificate, or they don't have a degree, or maybe they haven't done a lot of credentials. I mean, those LinkedIn courses or things like that, but they have an idea. They have this thing that they want to do. They have this community that they want to help. And now with the tools that we have, and especially now with these LLMs, you can kind of give a seed of an idea, and then within a few iterations, you have a plan, that previously someone who didn't have traditional coding skills couldn't do.
Yeah.
And so that's making me like rethink about how we interact with developers and who we define even as a developer now. I've heard a lot of people say English is the new programming language.
There you go. We have this debate internally all the time, which is like we've like, so in some areas we've like pigeonholed ourselves to be like, we talk to developers, but like it's builders, right? It's anyone who's like building a product needs to understand how these things can fit together, and a lot of times how they can use them. And a lot of the tools now, as you said, you don't need to be like, a high level software developer. If you know a little bit of code, you can do a lot. So yeah, I definitely feel that. And actually, Elmer, you recently beat me out in an internal hackathon. I guess that was a couple months ago now. Do you remember for the AI assistance hackathon? I came in second, and you came in first.
Oh, well, you were definitely a worthy opponent.
Yeah. And the only reason, and so how are those, Elmer won a pair of the Meta AI sunglasses.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you having fun with those?
Yes, they are interesting. They remind me of, back in the day, I was a Google Explorer.
Oh, did you have the Google Glass?
Yes.
Those were so weird.
For like a year. Yes, they were. They got me in so much trouble. I had managers at fast food restaurants tell me, "You're making our cashiers uncomfortable. You need to remove this camera from your face."
Right.
It was those are interesting times. And so what I would say is that these new glasses, I like the battery life so much better. I think with the Google Glass, it was like an hour or two max, and then that's it. With these, like, they can last several hours. I like the
they look and feel like, I got to try someone's on at one point. They look and feel like normal sunglasses too.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like they get out of the way. I use them as my prescription driving glasses, and so they double as that. And there's been a few times where I've been able to catch moments with my family that I probably wouldn't have otherwise caught. Sometimes when you have that phone in your pocket and you don't get it out in time, where you can just say, "Hey, Meta, take a picture," or just tap on the thing. So that's been wonderful.
Nice. You guys are convincing me. Maybe I need to get a pair of Meta. I thought they were a little silly, and then I can't even remember who, but one of my friends had them, or maybe it was even another Twilion had them, and I tried them on, and they were super cool. And like, sound was good, and they don't look ridiculous. But yeah,
make sure you got to make sure it looks good. No, yeah.
Can you remind me what you built though? That's the one I couldn't remember, because like that was a while ago.
Yes, it was a couple of internal tools to help around prioritization, and basically using the AI systems to help us figure out how to prioritize a new incoming task and then automatically add that to our task manager. And I believe there was like 2 or 3 things that I demoed on that day, but that was the one that still has me most excited, because I have an issue where I just allow too many things into my task list. And every time I look at it, I just want to just lay down. It's just too much. And so I'm trying to figure out, how can AI help me with this? And even AI is like, I give them the list and it's like, nope, it's not possible. What are you trying to do? But I think there's a lot of promise there, because actually it does do a good job. Like if you give a new task to it based on the prompt that we've given it, it does a pretty decent job. I always worry about it though, because the hallucinations always stress me out, and I just know that one key project is going to get reprioritized in the worst way. So the way we've been approaching everything is just human in the loop kind of strategy. trust but verify kind of thing. But actually, in this case, it's more like don't trust and verify.
Yeah, I feel like let AI make a suggestion and then confirm whether
Yes.
it's correct.
There you go.
Yeah.
It is incredibly amazing how often it gets it right, I would say. But it is extremely frustrating when it doesn't, especially when you give it explicit detail and it's still like, nope, not doing that.
Yeah. And I know you like to build things and whatnot, and you're a fellow girl dad. My daughter, I think, is a little younger, but you did some stuff with the Girl Scout cookies. Is that right?
Yes, we've sold so many cookies together. It is probably one of the best things that you can do with a daughter, because you don't get that one-on-one time generally. At least I don't. Like, we drop them off at school, we take them places, but they're kind of sequestered in that cookie booth and they have to be there with you. And so, you get to talk about things you would normally do. And then, the driving between the booths, because normally, we're at a booth for like 1 or 2 hours and we have to pack up and go to the next one.
Yeah.
There's just so much involved with it. There's the, picking up of the cookies, the counting of the money, delivering the money, delivering the cookies. And so one of the things that we ran into is, over time, because I think Audrey, for like 6 years, she sold over 5,000 boxes per year. And one of the secrets to that is the follow-ups of the people who had bought from us in the past. And we started first with just on paper. She would write down in her little notebook, and she would write the addresses, because we would basically just walk as much as we can with her little cart, and door to door. And then eventually, you get that one person who will buy a whole bunch, and then they would tell their friends and so on and so forth. And we'd note that and dutifully come back the next year. But then, over time, so we have to up our game, like Dad works for Twilio, and he should be, he should be using some of these tools. And so, we started using email and text messaging. Text is really the big thing, because folks are not sending emails to buy cookies.
Right.
They're texting us. And that was another issue. Is like, okay, well, what number do we give? I mean, when you're selling that many cookies, that's a lot of people that you're contacting with. And so, one of the first things we did, we got ourselves a Twilio number. I think before that, we were using a Google Voice number before we were acquired with Twilio. Then when we joined Twilio, I said, oh, we have to fix that. We need a Twilio number. And the advantage of that was how programmable it was.
Yeah.
I think one of the first things we did is a little Pythonista app that allowed us to be able to send messages programmatically from the phone. And if you look at the blog post that I wrote when we were acquired, there is a explanation of all the ways that we used Twilio for that 1 year that she made that 5,000 goal.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. But and how Audrey learned about Twilio is she had the great fortune of being able to do Twilio Quest.
Nice.
But Twilio Quest is amazing. That's how we cut our teeth before we were acquired. Actually, there was a group of us inside of SendGrid that would just play Twilio Quest whenever we had some free time, so that we can get familiar. So we kind of have a soft spot for the Twilio Quest.
I feel that too. I think my second week on the job, or my first week on the job, I was like somewhere like working remote, but my like whole family was there. They're like, "What are you doing for work?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm helping with a hackathon and I'm playing this video game." Welcome to my job.
It's beautiful. So well done. I had so much fun with that.
I did, by the way, post in chat the link to that. I'll throw it up here for a second too, just so we can see. But it's there. It's the blog post, super cool. I just love that. Very simple. We're gonna use these tools for something like automate something really easy and super cool. And I'm glad that your daughter got to learn a little bit along the way too, right? It wasn't you just doing things for her, I'm hoping.
I also,
yes. No. Oh, go ahead.
No, keep going.
I just wanted to say that another shout out to the Girl Scouts for encouraging her to be interested in STEM. I know Dad's a engineer, but actually, as parents know, your kids don't always want to do the thing that you're doing, and I'm not one that wants to impose on what her passion is. But those early days of Girl Scouts, they did things like underwater drone camp. I mean, underwater vehicle, and then they
Yep.
had drone camp and all these things that you don't typically associate with Girl Scouts. And if you ask her now, she'll tell you that that's how the seed of that excitement began.
Is she in STEM? Does she do STEM? Like, or higher?
Yes. Now she's a junior at Cal State Fullerton as computer engineering, and she focused on cybersecurity. She was the youngest female to graduate from the high school cybersecurity program called Cyber Patriot program, and it's very like maybe 80-90% men still. Maybe even more, but she was able to get through that, and the bug bit her. And then when I would expose her to things like Twilio Quest, and then I think the thing that got me so excited is one day one of her computer science teachers had like an app inside, I think it was like a Google a code environment, but they were sending text messages and it said powered by Twilio in the little widget, and I was like, yes. So that was really cool. So she definitely has a soft spot in her heart for SendGrid and Twilio. And as you were mentioning before about playing games, the first time that we had a Bring Your Daughter to Work day, we had this big Nerf gun fight, and she asked me, "Is this what you do all day?" It's just shooting
Pretty much.
Like, yeah, this is your future.
LOL. No, yeah. I mean, what I also loved in the blog post was even how you connected the whole SendGrid aspect too. So knowing like your wife did not want to be overwhelmed with text messages, you're like,
right.
I'm gonna send you an email digest. And I think that to me is just like the cool part of like how these API, like you can customize, like really customizing it for different people, but everyone was still in the Girl Scouts ecosystem, but we just had different ways of interacting. So I love how you were able to kind of translate that over. So like, okay, I love that we're getting to know Elmer a bit more. So other things that you're into, like what's your wellness wave? Hopefully you're not eating Girl Scout cookies every day of your life, but it's cool if you are. Shout out to what are my favorite? Samosas are really good. There was a nice the other one, there's like a lemon one too. But aside from you eating your Girl Scout cookies, what's your wellness wave?
It kind of started in the pandemic when I was getting a little stir crazy. So I decided to do a couch to 5K program and get into running and or jogging. And that became a passion of mine. Like now, like it's something to where I do it every day if I can. It kind of doubles as exercise and like kind of a meditation experience. Before the running habit, I was pretty consistent with meditation. Usually 10 to 15 minutes I would do every day. But the running, there's something about being outside in particular. I could do the treadmill and feel like a hamster on a wheel, but there's just something about being outside, particularly like in a place like Boulder, Colorado. I mean, it's such beautiful scenery, but we have, there's a lot of beautiful things here in Southern California and Northern California. And so I try to, whenever I travel, try to get that into, and it's just kind of like a resetting experience and a way to clear the mind and commune a little bit with nature. As far as eating, one of the things that helped me out a lot when I was a bit unhealthy, when I was traveling a lot, was intermittent fasting. It kind of taught me that you can control those impulses, because I would just constantly be eating and snacking all the time. And with intermittent fasting, I was using an app for it. And so, I like to gamify things. And so it's like, I can't lose my streak. I need just one more day. And so that helped me out a lot by gamifying it. But now I don't do the intermittent fasting, but I would say I probably eat a lot less than I did before, just from the practice.
Yeah, sometimes traveling or just being in different places, it's hard to do that. But
no, It was when you were talking about running, I was like, when you're like nature, disconnecting, I was like, oh, I guess he didn't create an app for that too. I was like, did you create
You
any?
could have an app that reminds you to run or suggests routes.
You know,
Yes,
Yeah.
love it.
that
Love
could be
it. There's a lot of cool apps out there that do these things, and sometimes I like to just not be too prescriptive about it. I think that's part of it too. Is like I definitely track it because I want to improve. One of my favorite things now is if I use a running app, I take a screenshot of it and I have an ongoing thread with one of the GPTs where I ask it for like what's the best way to recover from this run, like my back.
Oh.
Oh, I like that.
Or I would say, now I'm at the gym and I did these exercises. What should I do now? And then I treat it kind of like as if there was a trainer with me because I'll use
Mhm.
while I'm working out. I'll say, I just did a set and I did it to exhaustion. Can you recommend to me what weight I should use for the next one? And then it will do that, and it does a really good job. I mean, I feel kind of weird sometimes, like getting into these detailed conversations
Yeah.
with the AI while I'm at the gym, but I find that it's surprisingly good, especially if you give it the context.
Yeah. And some of those things make a lot of sense. I get a little nervous. I've heard a few people talk about using AI as a therapist. That makes me
Mhm.
nervous. But like using it to like help you with your workouts or like, help you stay healthier, that's just such a cool tool. And like I'm curious because I feel like you're one of the people who's kind of like jumped on AI in a way that I'm like impressed by. Like you're really excited about like what was it about this new tech? Or are you like this for everything? Were you like a super big crypto blockchain guy too? Or was it just like is there something about AI that like got you excited and like that keeps you using it and staying excited?
Yes. I was not a blockchain crypto person, unfortunately. Someone did buy a box of Girl Scout cookies for $4. And then when I finally cashed it out, it was $80. So that was cool. And I wish I
Mm.
would have collected a lot more back then. And I feel, very dumb that I didn't get in when I could have. But I think the thing that really got me excited about AI is the potential that we can do. Like I'm very much into education. I love
Hmm.
teachers. I love to help people. And I just feel like this is such a multiplying effort,
Mm,
like when I learned about this concept of a digital twin, and not saying that I would make a good digital twin, but the idea that we could duplicate like a really good like tutor, for example,
Yeah.
that could
mhm.
be really customized to a specific person and then do that at scale. Um, to me, that's incredible, and I can't believe it actually. Like sometimes I look at this stuff and I'm just like it gives me chills just thinking about it. Like but it's definitely overwhelming. Like it first gave me this idea that okay, all these ideas that I used to have in my list, AI could probably solve almost all of these things if I just gave it a little bit of time. But then I realized that that's just causing more stuff to do. And so now I'm back to square one with how do I prioritize all this stuff? And
Yeah.
that's my biggest passion now is to figure out, okay, given my values, my principles, and my goals, um, help me make a sense of all this mess that's into my systems, that all of these different tasks that I have to do.
Yeah.
Um, and it's hard, it's a really tough challenge, almost like naming things, for example. But it's getting so good. I was just playing with the latest version the other day, the O1
Hmm.
reasoning model. Um, and it's like then you just want to re-ask all of the questions
Oh
again. It's
yeah.
like, okay, now I have to start over, you know.
Right.
And then you start using some other ones like Claude and Gemini, and they're all like a little bit different. And I don't
Yeah.
know,
And
it's just an incredible time.
it sounds like they all have like they're a little bit good at different things. Random
Yeah,
question
absolutely.
that you just reminded me of. Have you ever read a book called Diamond Age by Neil Stevenson?
That's funny because I'm right in the middle of reading it. It's on Audible.
I was
And I
literally
think
like
I'm maybe
looking to
about
see
30,
where it is on my
40%
desk.
into it.
Okay, because it's so it's a he's one of my favorite authors. I think he does such a good job of like sci-fi that's like pretty way out there, but grounded in like real science and technology. But
Yes.
one of the big through lines of the book is this like super customized AI like
Yes.
book that like teaches kids all this crazy stuff. Anyways, funny. Happy
Very
to talk more
accountable.
about that a different time. We'll do like maybe we'll have like a book club stream for that one.
Yes.
But you mentioned in that last bit a little bit about like tutoring or teaching and like I understand you do some like mentoring or advocacy. Can you tell me a little bit? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. I've had the great fortune of having some incredible mentors in my life, and
Mhm.
to a fault, all of them have said the only thing we want from you is to do the same. Go out there and give what we gave to somebody else. And to me, that's a huge responsibility and very stressful. But I feel like it's important, and I'm trying to figure out ways how to do it to where I can preserve my own sanity. But um, so I try to multiply that effort through things like social media or through the internet, kind of multiplying knowledge. But there's nothing like that one-on-one or
Mhm.
it's going to a group and actually interfacing with people. So I try to do that where I can. I'm going to another one soon in October for my alma mater at UC Riverside, where I go and talk to the graduating engineers there. And
Yeah.
the last time I did that, one of them came up to me with a real toughie. They were having an existential crisis. They were, about to graduate, and Chat GPT was taking the world by storm, and they were like, I'm giving this thing my problems, and it's solving it really good.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I learned this stuff if this thing could do a better job. And I reminded him that the core fundamentals of what you've learned as an engineer are important. There's
Mhm.
questions that other people would not even know to ask. So don't ever devalue your education. We've all been educated in different ways, and we all bring different stuff to the table. And that's what's beautiful about Twilio. I think we have I mean, if you just think about my own team and the documentation team, we have such incredible folks on the team, and they all bring different stuff to the table. And so I try to get them to remember that, like, nothing what you did, all that work that you put in, do not disqualify it. And then, sometimes they'll assign me to look at resumes, or maybe I'll
Mhm.
be at a booth and talk to folks that are looking for what's the next thing to do in industry. I try to, for those folks that are just graduating, I try not to pigeonhole them into anything. I mean, trying to teleport myself back to that time is tough because it's been quite a few years now. But I know that, when you have all that energy and excitement, I think you should explore a little bit, and see what actually you're passionate about, because maybe they haven't really figured that out.
Mhm.
Opinion, those 4 years you spend in college, it's hard to figure out, is this the thing that I really want to do? Especially if you're pegged into one particular major. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do that, and then I also volunteer for Girl Scouts. I'm also on the board of the Council for the Advancement of Black Engineers, trying to help
Nice.
more Black engineers get their advanced degrees. Um, I also volunteered to help start Operation Code, through some work I was doing with SendGrid at a boot camp over there with Techstars. Um, I just, generally my biggest problem is saying no to stuff.
Yeah. I've
I
seen that.
I
Yeah.
to to help as best as I can.
No,
You
that's
know,
it's real. It's
Yeah.
honest, because it's like you've seen the impact that others have had, on you. But
yeah,
I do think
sure.
over time like things will start to scale out. So it'll be interesting. I do think you'll saying no might be hard, but you can say yes to the things that you feel like will give you like max impact, and things like that. And I think you'd be surprised that like even on the little things can have major impacts. So I do think like even seeing that aspect. But no, it's kind of beautiful to hear, just like all the things that you're working on, the ways in which like giving back has been, so integral to your journey, and even the example that it's able to set for others. No, yeah. So that's cool. That's cool to see the advocacy part. And then also just like that giving back takes different forms. So like sometimes it is that one-on-one mentorship, and like you said, sometimes it is like I've reviewed your resume or I had a conversation with you. So yeah, I do think that like planting those seeds, super super important. Let's see. I am also might be switching gears a little bit. What are you working on? Like we want to be all in your business. Clearly, this is how we catch up. We catch up by asking you your life story. What are you working on? How's the family? What are you building? And now we're like, what are you working on?
Yes. Yes. So now we're trying to figure out how to incorporate all of this AI stuff into our daily activities as a documentation team. As you can imagine, as someone who spends most of their day dealing with writing stuff, and with what AI is specifically tuned to do with writing is a huge disruption. And I don't think we really quite understand how that's going to affect, like just even thinking about the next generation, how they consume content. You know, how are they just going to talk to their digital twin or their AI to get the stuff? And so, you know, one of the things that we've been very passionate about is having this source of truth that's stable and trustworthy that we can build upon. Because, you know, at the end of the day, when you interface either through the documentation or you interface through one of our helper libraries or through one of our blog posts, that source of truth has to be solid, and you have to trust us. And so what we're trying to do is up level all of the knowledge that we've collectively generated over the years. How do we embody that into a system to where we can be more predictable, more consistent? You know, for example, we have a style guide for how we write our content. And if you go to, like, say, Google or Microsoft, they all have their style guides. And if you look at these, they're, you know, pretty substantial. And to expect folks to be able to like grok all of that and be able to naturally take a piece of content and adhere to that is very, very difficult. We do our best, but it's difficult and it takes a lot of time. With AI, we've been able to speed up that process and discover new opportunities on how we can bring more clarity, more organization to the documentation based upon how we train our specific models. So as you mentioned, Alex, we've definitely been doing a lot of experimentation since we started having the ability to start playing with these tools internally. And so we're kind of looking at how do we use these things in tandem with existing tools we have, like, for example, tools like Veil that are kind of prescriptive, rules-based, very software-driven, versus something like an OpenAI model where you can give it kind of like a broad guideline, and then it'll attempt to try to implement what it is you said, although not always accurately. But it definitely, like when you combine the human contact with the software tools that we've been using forever, plus the new AI capabilities, I think we're finding new opportunities that just were not possible before. And so personally, I'm super grateful to have the opportunity to do things like Tweak, where we get to come together as a company and try new things. And it just feels like this last year has been like a continuous drawing of the owl kind of Tweak situation. Because it's like, okay, we have access to these tools and they're incredible. How do we best use them? You know, and there's no way to do that except actually using them. Like, for example, one of the things that we did not too long ago was updating the meta descriptions for the documentation pages. Now, think about what it takes to write a meta description. To me, like, that's one of the ultimate tests of if you could teach something, if you can distill it down to like a few sentences. And that's what meta description is like. So think about that, over 2,000 pages. That's a lot. For one, that's yes. And you have to grok that whole page and figure out, okay, what is somebody searching for to want to get to there's just so much that goes into it. But AI already has in its brain all the best practices. We actually give it the actual documentation from Google to say, this is what we're looking for. And then we ask the AI, how do we convert the context of this page with what the search engines are looking for, help us create something that that would be useful for someone that's trying to find this information. And we had some surprising results. It's still not 100%. I still think it's like probably around 80% zone, but I think that's
it's
it's
so much
important
work taken off your plate if 80% of the time you like don't have to be the genesis of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think what also, like, as you're talking, one thing that comes up, especially with the docs, is like having a vision of what you wanted to get out of these tools. And I do think sometimes it's like we can get into like the playful, we're tinkering, but like even you being like clarity and organization, like those are two things. And it's like, I think it gives a benchmark essentially for you to know, is this working? Is it not really working? Is this becoming more clear? Is this helping me be more organized? So I think like, yes, you can dive in head first, but also what are the benchmarks? How do you know that this is actually contributing? So I love how this, like, that sense of like, what's the goal here? Is kind of present.
I love the way you're thinking about this, because you really need to have that balance of time. We need the time to play and just experiment for no reason, just to see what these tools can do. You don't know until you cut yourself.
Yeah.
I remember my first shop class, the shop person holds up his 2 fingers missing, and instantly had respect for all of the machines. So sometimes you go a little too far, but I think you need both. You need that time to sit back and reflect, and that's why I think that the meditation part and just sleep too. I forgot to mention that there was what was the guy's name? Matt Walker, somebody came out with that book about sleep that basically made me feel I was going to die imminently, because there's no way I was getting that.
If you don't do it, it's like your life's over. Yeah.
Yes. I'm like, this must not apply to parents. We're supposed to die, apparently.
I'm always tired. We have one of our other team members, Frank, just had a baby as well. And like, he was like, yeah, Alex, you told me that I would always be tired. I didn't understand until now what that really looks like. It's rough. And like, you're kind of past that. You can sleep now more, I'm hoping. Otherwise I'm just scared for my life with a
oh no, it does not end. As the person with a parent who like she's concerned. She's like, I was like, Mom, when do you go to sleep? She's like, 1 o'clock. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, just reflecting on life and like concern. So Alex, unfortunately, it's a forever thing.
I would wholeheartely agree with that. Now that we have an older one that's moved out of the house, it's a very it's definitely, but it's not the same as those first few months. I have never experienced that kind of tiredness ever, and I don't know how. I mean, because we have to wake up like every hour or 2 hours. I don't think our body's just made for that. It's just not. It's not normal. And so I would feel like that's why another reason why I'm so thankful to Twilio for giving us that time off, because I would have been useless anyway. I would just been falling asleep in meetings, just passing out. It's very hard. Salute to the folks that get through that successfully. But yeah, the sleeping is so important. The reason why I was saying that is because the idea of giving your brain the time to like make those connections. Because if you're constantly plotting and scheming, you don't have time to like zoom out and look at how all the pieces come together. Yeah. And I think that's the hard part, is figuring out how to create that balance. It's a real tough one.
So getting back to the docs, and you like mentioned some prioritization. We have so many docs, and your team's not that big. I think it's like 6 or 7 people, maybe even less now. What are the things that like you're prioritizing? Like, what are the things that you're kind of focused on right now, or have just been, or are about to be, as far as like docs that you're updating or creating new things for?
Yes, we have, and I have to be very careful because we have some exciting things that are coming up that I can't talk about.
Really cool releases that I'm excited to talk about at some point on here, but we're not there.
Yes, and you're going to be lucky to be able to do that. Yeah, but we just had a RCS release. I don't know if
that's a cool one.
You all talked about that one. That one's really cool. It's really awesome the capabilities that we've been able to put in developers' hands with that. Big SendGrid one, finally deprecating the V2 API in favor of the V3, which seems like it's been so long. But sometimes, it just works. It just works. You know. It's a testament to the resiliency of that product. But I would just like to encourage folks to definitely dive into the V3. I kind of think about it kind of like what RCS brings to the table, just bringing like another layer of other cool things you can strap on top of your email campaigns. So definitely check those things out.
For those who don't know, RCS is a new messaging protocol. Not new, I think it's been around for a while, but it was like originally adopted by like Android, and now Apple started having support for it as well. So it works on iOS and Android devices, and it can do things like it's like a richer text experience. Like you can have like carousels of pictures, and like I think you can do like buttons and things like that. So it like really ups the experience within the messaging app that you can now interact with using a Twilio API, which is super cool.
That is very cool. All of these releases are cool to me.
What about I know you've worked a little bit on the customer deliverability engine. Can you tell us a little bit?
Oh, that's right. Yes. That is a really cool product. If folks have not checked it out, definitely log into your console and start playing around with your data in there. I mean, traditionally, you'd have to, go into a bunch of logs that maybe are not very clear, or, you got disparate data in different places. But now with this new tool, you're able to converse with your data as if you're having a conversation with someone like you're familiar with other LLM related tasks. So I would highly recommend you check that out. And also the deliverability score to get a better idea of how your campaigns are going. There's a lot of great tools for folks that are doing things in the SMS arena right now. And what we hope is that by having access to these tools, it'll allow you to have greater insights to how your campaigns are doing. And then consequently, you can keep iterating and getting better and better, because I think that's what our customers are going to demand. They're going to demand a certain level of personalization, especially this new generation coming in.
Yeah. And this is the content that Bianca and this is our bread and butter, right? It's like, how can you... like we are trying to empower our customers, the Twilio customers, the SendGrid customers, to create better experiences for their customers. And so much of that is just like, you need the data, you need to try things, you need to run experiments, you need to test all this stuff out. You need to figure out where AI is helpful and where it's not, right? Like, it's really cool on the docs that we can have an 80% success rate, and then somebody can manage that other 20%. But like, what if that's going live to a customer? What if that 20% that's not working? So like figuring out how AI fits into it all too is so important. And I'm glad we're doing more to empower our customers to see how they are impacting their customers. And that's just, it's like the customer deliverability engine's cool set of tools there.
I do have a question that I mean, this is another sidebar. But I think even as we're talking about personalization, I'm kind of curious, like, especially from your lens of email and what have you, but like, what do you feel like personalization means to you, right? Like, if you think about that phrase and how you feel like it relates to developers, like, what is that? What comes to mind for you?
I think a good modern analogy is how the latest version of ChatGPT has that customization feature in there where you can give it some context about yourself. So for example, if I'm planning a family trip, if I were just to use the vanilla ChatGPT, it's going to give me a vanilla answer. Even if I give it some context, if I say I have 3 kids and my wife and we're all coming together, it's going to give us something cool. But then if I go into detail and explain that this kid likes to do that, and this other kid likes to do that, and this one likes to eat this, and this one's allergic to that, then you couple that with, like, say, the itinerary from the place you're going. Like, say we're going to Disneyland. You just upload all the content there, and then say, I'm planning to be there at 2 p.m., and I'm going to be there till 8. Boom, you get a very customized, detailed plan that's customized to you, and it's beautiful. It's almost like, sometimes when you're shopping and you get that really that ad that just hits, and you're like, I don't know how to feel about this because this is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But you
Right.
nailed it so good.
Yeah.
But also, thanks. Like, actually, I do need that.
I do want that. Yeah.
No, yeah.
There's-
I mean, oh yeah.
Please, Bianca.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think the interesting thing there is like you took the time and energy to put your info in there. I don't think a lot of people are going to do that. And I think the scary, not scary, but like the scary reason why that marketing stuff works is that's the info that people didn't like. It just is there for them. So at some point, a lot of this AI is you're going to be able to kind of like turn it on, give it access to one or two things, and you're not going to need to have to provide that context, right? It's going to know that because the last 3 trips you took, you always went mountain biking. You probably want to go mountain biking again this trip, right? Like, at some point, it's just going to know, and that's both scary and super cool.
It's when I found out about how all our data was leaked from NSA was I had met someone was saying how you can buy your information on the dark web for like $80, and I was like, what? This is crazy. But then I thought, like, what if you had access to that data yourself? How powerful will that be? Like, it's a given. Other people have access to your data and you don't know what they're doing with it.
Yeah.
But what about if you be intentional about it? And that's what gets me excited about all the educational stuff. Like if we know a lot about a certain kid and how they organize, like with my son, he has IEPs and they spend a lot of time focusing in, figuring out what are his specific needs. And I love it because then based on that, and then based on our observations, we can really create a very tailored experience to help his specific journey. And traditionally, that's so incredibly difficult when you have, 20 to 30 kids in a class, and the teacher, bless their heart, trying to figure out how to keep all of these kids in the same journey. It seems impossible. But now, it feels like we're very close, if not there yet. It's hard to say, because I'm not that in tune with what's going on in today's classrooms with the folks who are like on the cutting edge of AI. But I would love to learn more about that and see how folks are practically using these tools today.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Good idea for a guest.
Yeah.
Find someone.
Good call. No, one thing I appreciated, even what you mentioned, which is you can see the difference in personalization. And I think when you now have, like when you've paired that with like the tools that allow you to do that for everyone. So like not just a few people get that delightful experience, but like, what does it look like to build that? I do think that unlocks, right? And if we think about like technology, software, like what can you unlock? And I think there is something to be said about like, we can have these words like personalization or scale or all these things, but really in its essence, it's like, this unlocks new possibilities. You having better details, better data kind of unlocks something that you probably weren't even thinking about before. And so I love that, just kind of that reminder of how does personalization physically feel? It feels delightful. It feels like, oh my gosh, you know me. Like, we're fast friends, and just how those additional pieces of context do that. And like, while you'd love to do that for everyone and ask them all the questions about who are you, what's going on, having technology and tools that kind of help you, bring delight to everyone, it's not a bad situation.
Yeah.
I love it from the standpoint of someone who is trying to serve other people, because I remember when I volunteered to be one of the concierges for Signal, and we were using Flex to serve customers, and it was a beautiful thing to be able to see a little context, because it felt like I wasn't going in blind, because I had been on those sorts of volunteer sessions before, like in Zendesk, where we would go in and we would help trying to solve customer problems so we can more deeply understand our customers. But it was always going in blind. Like it was just that ticket. You didn't have the context. I mean, we could search and look at other similar context, but with Flex, I saw a glimpse of the possibilities, and it got me really excited. I was like, this is incredible. So now, like when I call that person and I need help, instead of them having to like refigure out everything from scratch, they can have this kind of history that normally takes, time to develop. like you said, fast friends, like we can like get started right away. Like I can bring value to you as soon as possible. Like Jervis used to say, time to joy. I like that idea of like, how quickly can I get to helping you get to where you're trying to go?
Yeah.
And I think AI is helping us do that.
It is. That reminded me of like a new term I had heard from some product folks recently, which is not using minimum viable product, MVP, but minimum lovable product. Like what's the least we can do to make something that you actually love? It's just, time to joy, all that stuff is a cool idea. I have a philosophical question that I think, Elmer, you're uniquely, given what you've done, what you do, and who you are. So I was thinking about this. We saw a demo recently and somebody made a like summarizer, right? Like a content summarizer. I feel like that's the first project that almost anybody makes with AI is like, oh, let me like ingest some stuff and summarize it and boil it down to 4 bullet points, and so I can know if I want to read it or not. And I was just thinking, like, we're in a time where AI is helping us write stuff, and then the stuff we do write, someone like AI is helping us summarize. And it almost feels like, why are we letting somebody else run AI through, or our docs through, or whatever we're writing through AI to summarize it? Like, should we just be doing that ourselves? Like, what would it be like if we like on every blog post had the 4 bullets up top that we decided were the important things? And I was just wondering there's not really a question there, but I was just like, oh, like it's kind of frustrating that like pretty soon everything that we write as humans or with the help of AI as humans is just going to be summarized by AI for someone to read. So like, what do we do with that?
Oh,
I was thinking about this as I was thinking about the open API specification, this idea that we like before, when AI started proliferate a lot, you saw a lot of news organizations trying to block it. But then what about us folks that want to give the AI the information? How can we give it to the agent in the quickest way possible? And maybe it is that summary. So maybe the future will be that every content that we create, there's like a header that's made specifically for the AI so that it could just get that information as fast as possible and digest it. Because when we start thinking about latency and trying to get these things to be able to communicate as fast as possible, even the AI doesn't have time. Well, I don't know. I mean, when you think about things on super big scale, that might be helpful in kind of thinking also about how we try to make, like, for example, with our new Doxis code platform, having our content as kind of like code, I think makes it more flexible, able to do like more programmatic things with it, more control over it. But I think one part that worries me about that summarization is the lack of enjoying that longer form content just for the sake of.
There's no storytelling.
Exactly. And, speaking of that, I was just asking it the other day to make a story for my daughter as we were driving home. And I was just thinking, like, it's pretty wild that you can just have this thing to create unlimited stories that are actually entertaining. Like she actually, she's very picky and she's like, let's have another one. And I'm like, what? Like, what about my stories? But this idea of losing the depth, like that book that you were mentioning, like, are we just not going to have stuff like that anymore?
Right.
That would be a tragedy.
It's interesting because it's like, I think we've just gotten into a very distilled culture. Like everything's so just like, where's the richness? I need some flavor, And it's like, with everything being so distilled, you kind of miss out on the essence, on the soul in some ways of a thing. But then there's also a part of me though that's like, we've been in information overload. Like within a given moment, someone can go through like 15 videos, right? And like that's a lot. Like I don't think as humans we were made to like ingest that much information and data. So I do think like, yes, if so much of the ask, going back to the philosophical, if so much of the ask is summarized and distilled, there's a part of me that's like, are we giving people too much data, too much information on the day-to-day that someone's first thing is like, can you make this shorter? Like what's the essence of this? So I do wonder if it's going to create more enriched writing. Like, what are you trying to say? what are the words that like, what's the, not get to the point, but essentially.
No, it is get to the point. It's,
you know,
there's a book I'm reading right now by the guys who created Axios, which is like a news organization. And it's all about like the way that they communicate, and like they talked about in their past as like news art writers, like journalists. They would write these super long things, and they'd be, you know, it was like prose and all that. And then eventually they realized, like, what's the one thing we want someone to take away from this? Like, what's the one part of this story that matters? And then like, why does it matter? And like, they have a whole format for how to think through that. And I think stuff like that's really useful. And honestly, like AI can probably help with that. I actually think they probably have an AI that you can feed some crap into, and then it'll like spit that out. But like, yeah, it is information overload. And it's also just like not always designed in a way that's meant to like have the biggest impact on us, I think.
Yeah, no, that's kind of interesting, because we did have an era of, I do think, shorter things, but then, you know, good old capitalism. And it's like, how long will people stay on the page? How many links can they click? And I do think it just creates a weird relationship to information. Not all we want is distilled, but I do think over time, people will kind of want that more, like, you know, you could read the review that's like, AI generated this. Okay. I'll give you an example. As we, like, you know, we're winding down, right? One thing that comes up is like reviews for hotels. So like TripAdvisor has done like a summary thing, and the summary stuff isn't good. The drama, I'm here for the drama. I walked in my room and they're like, clearly this hotel doesn't care about their, like, that's the essence. I need a little bit of the zhuzh.
Yes.
I need to not know, like, oh, the customer service was bad. Why was the customer service bad?
Yes.
Now, when I read 15 reviews around, I was ignored or whatever, now I'm like, ooh, I get the heart of this. So like, while yes, you know, these tools are trying to summarize the reviews for me, but sometimes I need to click through the link, okay? Just to kind of see, oh, understood. I get the meat of it. So maybe that's the thing too, which is like, how much filtering do we need? Right. And if you know.
And in chat, RJ Pearson actually had a great thought, which was like, if you're tailoring it with context of what you're trying to solve, that's there. But like, so much of the stuff I see is just like, summarize it. And I'm like, why that means that some random AI is summarizing what I'm writing for somebody else. I'd rather, wouldn't I rather do that myself? Make sure that it's actually getting the top points.
Love it. Yeah. I think that's a very interesting point. I was always accused by my professors of being too terse. And I can see why, because you need that context, you know. I think there's the same challenge that I'm having with that overloaded task list, you know. In that case, it's almost like the reverse. Like, I want to get the smallest bucket of these tasks so that I can actually achieve the goal. But, you know, I have found some very good use cases of summarizing things for with AI for books with an application. Like, for example, if I was trying to redo my morning routine, and so I said, based upon these books that I know have interesting stuff about morning routines, and then based upon my goals that I'm trying to do, can you summarize that into something that's actionable? And then then it'll do its thing. And then I'll say, okay, well, I only have 15 minutes. What can I do in the next 15 minutes? And I found that to be an interesting way of kind of getting down to that meat. But then when you said, Bianca, about drilling down, I think that's going to be an interesting way of discovering a person's interests and seeing what like makes them want to go down that rabbit hole. You know, like, when they click that link, why did they click the link, and what was the interesting part? And then I wonder if over time, then you'll start getting served more of the, like, you would only see those spicy comments. Mine might be all horrible and nobody cares about, but yours would be like the most amazing feed. And then maybe that's the value that some creators do, is they provide that to other folks, get Bianca's spicy feed of amazing stories. Because I agree with you. I see these in Yelp and I find them so entertaining. and I always question, like, this seems like somebody wrote this like a fiction writer, but it's beautifully done.
I mean, like when I even think about like, so I love Reddit has always been my, like when I need the deeper details, because I think there's something a computer will tell you and it's so bland. It can be so bland. And it's like, no, I need to know the like the things that are unspoken, right?
Yeah.
From the comments. And I think sometimes like technology can kind of distill it to a point where it loses its flavor, you know?
Right. Exactly.
So it needs the spice. We add the spice back. No,
Absolutely.
Elmer, I appreciate this. So thank you for joining us on our like AI, I call it the AI wrap up piece of everything.
Yeah.
First,
you want to get everyone's opinion. I think it's like you and yours in particular is meaningful to me because not only are you doing it, but you're also creating content. So you're on both sides of this. Like,
yeah, no, we feel that. Alex, what did you learn from Elmer today?
Oh man. I'm actually, as soon as we finish up this stream, going to start a mentorship program that I'm there. So like you're kind of just the things that you mentioned about how can I be helpful. Like you just display a deep amount of empathy and I want to emulate that. So I'm probably going to ask you some more questions at some point about the mentorship stuff. One-on-one, you can be a mentor. But that stuff is just really inspiring. And then I go back and forth about my own, how much I want to be using AI and if I want to be using it more. And you're kind of starting to inspire me to find ways to use it that are, I think, constructive and not just like, this is a toy that I think people are playing with in ways that doesn't make sense. So I really appreciate that side of it too.
Oh, good.
No, yeah, I love that. I love that. I will say one of the things I've always appreciated from you, Elmer, is that desire to experiment. Just like, I feel like to have been at a company for so long, you know, there has to be a level of just adaptability. And I just love how you've met every era of Twilioness, right? With curiosity, with kind of excitement. And I think like we can make the journey our own. So I love how even when you're like, hey, during the pandemic, I felt like I was inside too much. So I just decided to start running, right? So I think that aspect of like the incremental, the tiny wins, right? The tiny wins that we can get. And then also just learning more about the docs, learning more about just like that ecosystem is always great. But Elmer, it is such a pleasure. Clearly, we shouldn't all have to just catch up over stream, but our lists are long. So
yes.
We appreciate you just spending time with us today. It was such a blast, such a pleasure, just kicking it with you. And we hope to see you again. If you have any cool things you want to share with us, keep us posted. Any demos, we're here, you know, Tuesdays, 2 p.m. Awesome. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
And for chat and everyone else, we'll see you next week, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, Twilio Devs. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.